Greetings and salutations, my fellow Illumineers. It is me, your boy JDZ, and I'm back at you again with another Lorcana video. Previously on this channel, we did a ruling video. Now we're back at it again with another version, and with me, as always, I have none other than Judge Phil. And today we're going to talk to you guys about some rulings in Disney Lorcana. Yo, Phil, how you doing this morning? How you feeling? Are you ready to get into this?
For sure, I'm ready to jump into these rules, but just as a disclaimer and a reminder, guys, I do not represent Ravensburger or PPG. These are my opinions of the rules, and I work as hard as I can to make sure my understanding is correct for you guys. If you have any questions, I mean, please get in the comments and please let us know if we got anything wrong, because hey guys, I'm human. I'm so excited for the new cards coming out. I can't wait to see the interactions people come up with, and just ready to help everyone understand how the cards work. So yeah, it's an exciting time.
So a lot of people engaged with that last video. It was quite well received, and there were a few people who commented about their questions that they had. So first, before we hop in and start talking about the new cards, we'll answer some of the questions that some of the players had. So the first one that I had is going to be from a user named BenFlag2887. It says, I disagree with the beast ruling at 1705. The card says draw, it's not a may. Therefore, you have to remind your opponent that they have to draw. The same thing as getting lore from locations, in my opinion. So we did say that it was an effect that you can miss that time. And Phil, you want to clarify that and how we may have got it wrong, or what did you say about this question?
Sure. So unfortunately for us, we don't have a full digital client to play Lorcana. Hopefully someday we do. But until then, you know, we are human. We can miss things. And because we can miss things, there's a section in the Play Corrections Guideline called Miss Triggers, and that goes over directly when we miss mandatory effects. So since Beast is a mandatory effect, because it does not have the word may, we can miss it because we are, again, humans. So when we do miss mandatory effects, it goes to the opponent to say whether or not they want to add that effect to the bag. You can't just draw just because we said, oh, I missed for Beast, I'm going to draw now. No, that goes to a whole, well, we have to call a judge and then go into the whole, we missed the trigger, opponent gets added to the bag. And there's a interesting thing about mistriggers that if it's bad for you, if it's detrimental, you might actually get a warning. So keep in mind, try not to miss your triggers because they can be important to the game.
Pay attention and stay locked in. Okay, this one's coming from a user named Spider Primus 2863. I had my own issues with the judge at Lorcana Set Championship. I played Tamatoa so shiny and got an item from my discard, and my opponent got the judge over it and complained I didn't reveal it. I said the card's text doesn't say to reveal the card, but he insisted. As far as I can tell, if a card doesn't specify to reveal a card you got back from the discard, I'm not going to reveal it. And honestly, I should have left when the judge got an attitude about it. So what do you think about this situation from Spider Primus?
Well, I unfortunately wasn't there, but it sucks that you had a disagreement with the judge. However, I think the judge is correct in this instance. When you are trying to pick something specific, you need to make sure, everyone needs to make sure that that card was the correct card type. For Tamatoa, it says you need to grab an item card. So if you're not showing me the card you got, how do I know you got an item card? To go clarify with what reveal is, usually reveal means when you're revealing it from a private zone. So when you're doing aerial, spectacular stinger, and you're looking at the top 4, you have to reveal the card that you're putting in your hand because it was a private card to begin with, right? Since discard and like the play zones, like they're public information, you don't technically have to reveal, but since you're choosing something specific, it should be made sure that you're choosing the correct thing. Otherwise, we can say, hey, maybe you didn't grab an item. I have no idea if you grabbed an item because you didn't show me what you actually picked.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think just being kind, and your opponent knows what's in your discard, just help everybody out. And I don't think you need to kind of get into that rule sharking mentality. I think that's kind of crossing the line, in my opinion. Okay, so next question coming in from Mr. Chrissy TCG. Mr. Chrissy asks, do you have to announce that your triggers are going into the bag?
No. So we all know what happened a few weeks ago. That is an old interpretation of the ruling. You do not have to announce when your triggers are coming or going into the bag, nor do you have to announce the order that you're pulling them out of. You just have to announce that you're pulling them out of the bag when you're pulling them out. So that goes back to the whole mistrigger stuff. For may or mandatory triggers, we just have to know that you're pulling it out of the bag when it was supposed to be triggered and when you could pull it out of the bag, or we've gone beyond that point where you would have missed it.
So the next question comes from Determinator 6363. They ask, if I have a dry Mulan, enemy of entanglement, play an action so she gains strength, then shift Mulan elite archer, does the archer get the +2 strength from the effect of enemy entanglement? Given the rules, doesn't keep the abilities of the base card and keeps gain effects, where does this lie? I think that's a great question coming in from Determinator.
So this goes back to what we talked about last time. This goes to that DOGS acronym, where when you shift, you gain the damage, the orientation, the gained effects and the status of the character. So what's going to happen here is that that Mulan has this +2 strength modifier, which is a gain status for a turn, right? But it would lose the effect of gaining additional strength whenever you played an action. So technically it has the additional strength and then even gains more strength because you shifted on top with the Mulan Imperial Archer.
See, I'm learning. So we're all learning. We're all learning. We're all getting better. Okay, we got a few more. Okay, this is coming in from Sizzle Boom. Sizzle Boom asks, how does the rule breakdown of the bag play into the Emerald Chromacon and Be Prep? I was Be Prepared and was told I do not get to trigger Chromacon bonuses, or should I have been able to bounce some characters to safety? Is this not like Hades, who gives lore when your guys get banished?
For Emerald Chromacon, it says during your opponent's turn, if one of your characters is banished, right, you get to bounce something. But remember, we can never interrupt effects that are happening or resolving. So Be Prepared happens. You have to banish all characters. For something like Hades does see the banishment happening, so that's why the trigger's going to happen and go in the bag. But by the time you actually pull the triggers out of the bag, there's no characters on the board for you to turn with Emerald Chromacon.
The last two questions that we have feature the card Diablo. Okay, the first one is from Mike O. Perez, who asks, if I have Diablo exerted and my opponent has Rabbit on the field, if my opponent plays Be Prepared and draws for Rabbit, do I draw for Diablo?
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to the same thing that we just talked about. When I play Be Prepared, all the characters are banished. That triggers Rabbit, which says when it leaves play, I'm going to draw a card. However, by the time I actually go to draw the card, since we resolved Be Prepared, Diablo's not on the field anymore to see that draw happen. So Diablo would never see the draw happen and would not be able to trigger from that.
I can see how that one can be a little bit confusing, but I think you just cleared that up. I think that makes a lot of sense. And the last one we're going to talk about featuring Diablo is going to be Diablo versus Will, aka Whole New World. Are you able to draw the extra cards individually, i.e. decide to draw an extra card one at a time, or do you have to draw all 7 at once? Would this also apply to friends on the other side as well?
Yeah, so for Diablo, it's a very specific wording. It says whenever your opponent draws a card while it's exerted, you may draw a card. So for each individual draw, you will get to draw a card, and it's a May trigger. So it'll stack, 7 times for Whole New World. After you resolve Whole New World with your own 7, you can resolve each draw individually. So you don't have to do all at once. If Diablo was worded to say something like, when your opponent draws 1 or more cards, you may draw a card. Then you would only get 1 card, and it would cover all the 7 draws. And then same thing with friends, since it's 2 individual draws, you would get 2 individual triggers from Diablo.
Okay, so you can choose if you want. You don't have to take all 7. You don't have to take both. You can just do 3, 4, up to 7. But that is going to be different with the card Prince John, right? When you're talking discarding.
Yeah.
I know that when he discards, you either do all or you do none. Is that correct?
Yeah. So same thing. So that was the difference with Prince John. Prince John says when they discard 1 or more cards, you may draw the amount of cards they discarded. And that's where you would have to go all or nothing at that point.
Well, I hope this cleared up a lot of stuff for everyone out there asking these questions. And as always, get down to the comment section if you have more questions, and we can potentially answer those questions in the next episode. But Judge Phil, we're jumping into set 7, and set 7 is introducing a lot of new cards, a lot of new mechanics, a lot of things that we haven't seen before. And we got Universal Shift coming out. We got a lot of different things happening in terms of damage moving and cards being played from the hand, and all things coming from the inkwell and out of the inkwell to the inkwell. So Phil, we got to jump into a couple of these things. Are you ready to do this?
Let's get to it.
So the first card we got to talk about is the card that's got a lot of people asking a lot of questions. This card, Ink Geyser, is going to be doing a lot of unique things to the game. This is one of the first cards that I remember, or that I can think of, that directly interacts with the inkwell and adds stuff back to your hand. We had Mufasa, but this
Mufasa,
yeah, we had Mufasa, but really nothing like this, where it's so many from both players' sides of the field. So it says that the cards have to be randomly added back from the inkwell to the hand. Can you just talk about what that means, and note taking perhaps, and putting ink in certain spots to try to manipulate your Ink Geyser effect?
Previously, there haven't been really any cards that affect what cards come from where, especially with exerted ink. Since Ink Geyser exerts all your ink anyways, it doesn't really matter. Since it is a random choice, right, you have to choose a method that is random. So usually that's going to mean rolling a dice or something to that effect to pick the cards. So with Ink Geyser, I think the best way to handle it is pick a random method that works for both players. Usually that's going to be rolling dice. Sometimes that's shuffling your ink together and having people pick. Whatever works for both players, as long as it's agreed upon. We did hear from Kyle, the rules manager, that you are technically allowed to order your ink or have it set up in a way that, as a mental reminder to yourself. So there's this notion called puppy piles for the new Pongo effect. So you can put, you can ink all your puppies to the left and then have every other card to the right. And that blew everybody's mind.
Yeah.
But what that also means is that since it is not randomly shuffling the inkwell and then choosing, they're allowed to keep their inkwell how they want it set up, and you would have to go to something like dice to roll to see which number is which to get that ink for Ink Geyser. So it's kind of crazy, and it's something to keep in mind of how you're going to resolve that card.
That is insane. I never considered that. So now we do have that Pongo card. So that's another card that can interact with your inkwell and send cards from your inkwell to the field. How does that work? Do you have to exert more ink to play those cards, or do they need to be readied in your inkwell and come in readied, or do they need to be exerted in your inkwell, come in exerted? How does that work?
Well, for Pongo specifically, you're just playing the card for free, and it would just come in normally. It doesn't have any other restrictions of coming in exerted or anything like that, or the orientation of the ink.
Mm-hmm.
The fun part of that interaction is if you use Lilo as well. Lilo Escape Artist from set 6. So if you order your triggers correctly when at the beginning of your turn after you're ready, and then you know exactly which 2 ink you want to exert, and if those, one of those inks is a puppy, right? You can exert 2 ink, play the Lilo from the discard pile, and then look at your inkwell and retrieve the exerted ink as a puppy and play that for free. Keep in mind, guys, if you guys are using ink tokens, when you guys are doing something like this, you must have your ink tokens set up in a way that you know exactly which ink token represents which card, so that there's no confusion of what you're trying to pull back.
That is insane, man. I think that just takes it to another level. I think ink tokens, they might have to start outlawing ink tokens if these effects keep taking place, because that just seems like it's going to cause a lot more confusion now that your inkwell is going to be so interactive, I would say. So something to think about, more things to pay attention to as this game is getting a bit more complex going into set 7. So talking about Zombie Lilo, another interaction that comes up is that new bolt card and timing and Zombie Lilo. Can you talk about that entire interaction and how that whole thing needs to play out in order to be the most beneficial to everyone?
So how Bolt works, at the start of your turn, you're going to ready Bolt, which will trigger Bolt. At the same time, though, at the start of your turn also triggers Lilo's effect. So when you get to the set phase, you get to actually decide which effect you want to resolve first. So if you resolve Lilo, you tap your exert your 2 ink, bring Lilo back in, and then you can resolve Bolt's trigger from the bag, which would then say, hey, I'm going to gain 1 damage for each undamaged character. So you get at least 1 damage if since your Lilo is undamaged. If Bolt's damaged, that's whatever, but you gain lore that way. So that's how that would work.
Okay, speaking of moving damage, we're going to talk about Devil Eye Diamond. I saw the enchanted art for this card. It looks really cool. This card actually might be very playable. Can you talk about that card, how it works with challenging characters? Like if I challenge a character and my character is banished, does that count as taking damage? And also placing damage versus adding damage or giving damage. Can you just clear up Devil's Eye Diamond? Because I think that's going to be a problematic situation.
So Devil's Eye Diamond requires damage to be dealt, which goes back to cards like Relentless Beast and stuff like that. And we know that the wording is a little funky, but damage being dealt means you have to deal damage, such as an action like Let the Storm Rage On, or dealing damage via challenge, as long as it gets past the resist of any character and stuff like that. So damage actually needs to be dealt from character to character or from an action to do it. Putting damage is not actually dealing damage. So stuff like Mosquito Bite from set 6, which gets around resist, right? Because you're not actually dealing damage for resist to trigger or for resist to replace anything. You're actually just putting damage there. That wouldn't count as dealing damage. Same thing with characters like Mother Gothel or Mulan, where they enter play with damage on them. It's not actually dealing damage to them. They just enter play with that damage. So they're not being dealt damage. They are damaged.
Got it.
So the wording is a little off there, but you have to deal damage for Devil's Eye Diamond to actually be able to work.
So if you challenge in with a character with 0 strength, and you deal damage to yourself because your character is now banished, does that count, or how does that work?
Well, Devil's Eye Diamond specifically says if one of your characters was damaged.
Right.
So if you rush in with a 0-1 and get hit, and your 0-1 takes damage, then yes. Okay. But if you were attacking like a cursed merfolk and your character wasn't damaged, then it wouldn't work.
Got it. Okay. Beautiful. 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 All right. The next one we're going to talk about is Teka, the new most powerful card in the game in terms of stats. It also has an ability that says when a character is exerted on your turn, banish that character. Can you talk about what if a character is already exerted and then you exert it again? Does that work? How does that happen? Does that still trigger the effect for the back?
Yeah. So for Teka, that doesn't work. And we understand, the rules community is a little in arms about this, is the reuse of certain words, exerted, stuff like that. But the character has to go from a ready position to an exerted position for it to work. And it would be clear if they said, hey, whenever a ready, an opponent's ready character is exerted on your turn, banish it. And, you know, it would clear things up, but that's just not how the card is worded. But we know how the effect is supposed to work, which is the card has to be exerted for it. So from a ready position to so something like Elsa or Freeze or a lot of the Elsas actually would work, but it has to be readied first.
And another card that might not do exactly what it says is that new Kronk card. Kronk laid back. He has ward and he's effect. I love it. An effect that will cause you to discard one or more cards from your hand. You don't discard. So can you just talk about that and the difference between an effect and also a cost? Because there are some people who are kind of missing how that works, and they're going to be upset when they don't, when their effects don't work the way they want it to.
An effect versus a cost. There are plenty of effects in the game that would make you discard. So such as something like getting sudden chilled, or at the start, the new Cusco Panicked Llama. At the start of your turn, choose one. Each player draws a card, or each player chooses and discards a card. That would be an effect, make you discard. And this Kronk would negate those effects, right? However, there are certain cards where we want it to work, but it won't work, right? So there's a Meg card a few sets ago, I think set 4, where it says when she enters play, you discard a card or you banish her. You would think, oh, well, I tried to discard, but Kronk, you know, said I don't discard, so I'm going to keep her in play. Actually, because you couldn't actually discard, you would banish her. So for Doc, Bold Knight, and again, I know that this is a little wonky because it's steel and this is a Amethyst Emerald card, but if you do something like Doc where it's a cost to effect, which is discard your hand to draw 2 cards, since it is a cost, Kronk wouldn't actually prevent you from discarding your hand.
So hopefully you guys were paying attention, because I know that's going to come up, because I can kind of see people already started to theory craft their decks and they're including this card and they're saying, oh, I don't have to do that. I don't have to discard this cost now. I'm like, I think you're going to be disappointed when you realize the truth is not what you think it might be. Okay, the next card I got to talk about because this one is already getting speculated quite heavily, and I think it's going to cause a lot of problems. The new Return of Hercules card. I think the artwork is pretty nice on this card, and the effect is very unique. This card says that when you play it, both players can select a card from their hand and place it onto the field, no matter the cost. Okay, so I think it's going to cause a lot of problems, honestly, when players start bringing out things. So can you break this card down? Who puts their character out first? Does the player get to choose if they want to, if the player brings out a card that they don't want to? Like say if it's a Maleficent Dragon, maybe both players bring out Maleficent Dragon. Can you just describe quickly how that scenario would work and just clear up this Return of Hercules card for the viewer?
So the Return of Hercules is an interesting one. If you look at the comprehensive rules document, 7.1.6 says if an ability or effect instructs you to play a card as part of resolving that ability, you must resolve the ability before playing the card. What that means is that when you're resolving a card like Naveen, Fossa, that card technically is played and is waiting, or it's waiting to be played until after the full effects of the card that you're working on. So for Naveen, for example, you have to fully resolve Naveen, which is say, hey, I'm going to play a free song or free action. You would play the song, but Naveen has to fully resolve, and that's how that kind of works. So Return of Hercules is, hey, we're both going to play or like reveal and play this card, but they're both technically waiting to be played until the full resolution of the effect. Now we go all the way up to in the CRD to 1.6.2, which says whenever an effect would affect multiple players at the same time, the active player resolves that effect first. So if I'm playing Return of Hercules, I'm going to reveal and show you a card that I'm going to play, right? And it's a May effect, so you can react and say whether or not you want to play something after I revealed the card that I'm going to intend to play. If we go back, so we both have to reveal in order, right? Now, if we both reveal the card, if it's both Maleficent, Monstrous Dragon, both are going to enter play at the same time, essentially, one after the other, right? And we both have to wait for all the cards to be played before we can get back to the bag to resolve the effects of when this character is played. So now I have my Monstrous Dragon, she's played, her effect goes in the bag. You play your Monstrous Dragon goes into the bag of your Dragonfire. Now we get to the bag, and I can pull out my Dragonfire, banish your Maleficent Dragon, then you get to your part of the bag, you pull out your Dragonfire and banish my Maleficent Dragon, and now we end up with nothing.
That'd be so funny. And you know it's gonna happen at least once, Phil.
It's gonna happen.
It'll happen. And it's gonna be a
super
super funny time when that goes down. I'm so looking forward to it. I'm glad they added that card. I think it can add some layers to the game, but it's also gonna add quite a bit of confusion.
It's going in my Robin Hood deck. It's going in my Robin Hood deck.
It's gonna add some serious judge calls too, I bet. So I love to see it. Okay, we'll do a couple more before we gotta wrap this up, Phil. We'll do a few more. Okay, I want to talk about this Ratigan card. I know a lot of questions came in for that guy. He has to be exerted in order to gain that lore, but what if he sings a song? Does that count?
Before a card is played, it has to be paid for, right? And part of singing is exerting the character. So if you sing with Ratigan, he's exerted before the card is considered played. So that's why you would get lore if you use Ratigan to sing a song.
Nice. Okay. We also have a new Gantu. I think this Gantu is going to be very playable, unequal 4. And he has a lot of effects, but one of them, he's paying taxes. You got to pay taxes on your card effects. What if I have multiple Gantus on the board? Do I just pay one tax, or do I get multiple tax for each one that I have that is available on the board?
Yeah, just like the new Tiana from set 6, the taxes stack.
Oh,
so death and taxes, right? But whenever you play something for free, you ignore all ink costs. So since Gantu is adding 2 to those ink costs, right? It's all part of that ink cost. It's going to be for free and negated. Just imagine if I had a coupon that said, I'm going to buy this item for free. And then you're like, well, I increased the price by $2. I said, this says for free, you know, like you're going to give me the item for free.
Okay.
The fun thing also is that just because something increased in cost, right, from Gantu's effect, it doesn't affect something like singing songs in the sense that a singer wouldn't, like, all of a sudden that action isn't, you know, higher or anything.
Okay. And same thing with the new Tamatoa that's coming out. When you quest, you can still play an item for free, tax free still, and just use his ability to put that onto the board. So that's really cool. I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people might have had those types of issues, and now you cleared it up. You're watching this video, now you know, and make sure you guys spread the word, and make sure you all get back into the comment section. Or we'll do one more and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, so we could talk about this new Baymax character as well. Okay, so playing him on a character who already has 5 damage, does he just explode? Does he just combust on sight, or how does that work?
Yeah, unfortunately he would combust on sight. Yeah,
that's cool,
because whenever you play a character, there's a game state check after each thing before you get to the bag. Right. So as soon as you play this new shifted Baymax, his effect does go into the bag, but you have to resolve the game state check, which says, hey, this character already has 5 damage and Baymax be banished. Sorry.
he's gonna so
before you can
before you even get a chance to resolve his effect.
Yep, before you get a chance to resolve the effect.
That is incredible. I had no idea. I guess you learned something. I guess you learned something today, and I definitely learned that, Judge Phil. But I'm telling you, there are going to be so many questions coming in from this set. I gotta get you back in here, Judge Phil, to help give this information out to the community, because it's going to be super important. Set 7 is really changing the game a lot. I'm excited for all the new additions that this set is going to be adding to Disney Lorcana, and I know that it's going to be increase the gameplay a lot of things, a lot of new decks, a lot of new ideas, a lot of new strategies are going to be added. But in that, there are going to be a lot of ruling debates, ruling discussions, and I need someone like you who has a firm grasp of this knowledge to kind of share this with the community. So hopefully you can keep coming by and doing this, Judge Phil.
I'm here for you, man. I'm here for your community. I'm here for Lorcana, and if you guys have questions, again, shout it out in the comments and we will get back to it, right?
Absolutely, guys. Make sure you guys get down there and get those questions in for Judge Phil. And while you're down there, please just go ahead and hit the like button and go ahead and subscribe to the channel as well, as we are on our way to 1K. Well, Judge Phil, do you have anything else you want to say before we sign this thing up and wrap it on up until next time?
No, just thank you for having me. If you guys are looking for games in Southern California, please check out www.ie-enchanted.com. That's where you can find all my socials as well. And yeah, enjoy playing Lorcana, guys. Just keep building up the community.
Absolutely. Well, my fellow Illumineers, that's all I have at this time. As always, I'm JDZ. I'm on a quest. Shout out to the real ones. Salute to the OGs. Peace.